coaching is like creating this big orchestra, and I am the director, and I'm determining sort of what melodies are going to be in our list of songs that we're going to learn to do and say, but it might be heard differently from one coach. Might be differently from when we had Trevor come in and speak to our team during the pandemic. It might be heard differently, from some of the outside people that we have coming in, or even just from a mentor that we bring in to be available. But the important thing is that it is all a part of the same melody. Mm-hmm. And so, and that's not always easy to do. And my job is to protect that, right? My job is to, the style can be really different. We now have 6 coaches on a staff, 5 assistants and myself, and we are so markedly different. And so we can reach kids differently, but the standards need to stay consistent. And so specifically, I just have to spend a lot of my time making sure that consistency is there, the standard is being held, but also celebrating the different styles in which that happens.
Welcome to Limitless Minds, the podcast where curiosity meets greatness. Each week, co-hosts DJ Eitzen and Harry Wilson sit down with some of the most exceptional individuals across sports, business, and beyond. From world-class athletes and peak performance coaches to visionary CEOs, entrepreneurs, and influential authors, they dive deep into the stories and strategies that drive extraordinary success. If you're ready to discover what it takes to be truly limitless and push beyond your own limits, you're in the right place.
Today's guest on the Limitless Minds podcast is Cori Close, the head coach of UCLA women's basketball since 2011. A former standout point guard at UC Santa Barbara, Cori has led UCLA to multiple NCAA tournament appearances and has built a culture of excellence both on and off the court. With over 2 decades of coaching experience, she's a passionate advocate for women in leadership and is dedicated to developing her players not only as athletes, but as well-rounded individuals. Cori's leadership philosophy, heavily influenced by legendary coaches, focuses on mindset, mentorship, and holistic growth. Check it out. Today, we're excited to have Coach Cori Close on the Limitless Minds podcast for this episode. She is the head coach for UCLA women's basketball, the Bruins. And I've had the luxury of having a front row seat watching Coach Close do her thing, her leadership, while my younger sister, played at Stanford for what seemed like 3 decades, but it was 6 long years with COVID, and got a chance to see UCLA and Stanford compete quite a bit. And I know my sister has a ton of respect for you, Coach, and as does the Wilson family. And so
I got a ton of respect for her. And I was on the losing end of most of those times you watched, so I couldn't have been doing everything right. So, but she's amazing.
There were some close games, y'all. She had to guard some really good guards, and and she was up for the challenge. But we were always like, man, Coach, we know one thing about UCLA: they're going to fight. They're going to fight. They're going to fight, and you've had some really good teams, and so. But I know, not everybody knows who you are and kind of your backstory. So so maybe give us a little bit of the backstory, like the pathway to get to where you are today, and just let them know. Let them know like how you got from Milpitas, California. Is that
Milpitas, but close. You're close.
Milpitas,
that sounds cooler. I like that better. We just change it.
He's bougie. He's bougie like that, Coach. Yeah.
Is that how they say it in Louisville?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Louisville.
No. I think the reality for me is like most people, I was so fortunate when you get to anywhere that's like, this is like a dream come true for me. You never did it alone. And I am from Milpitas, California, a little town outside of San Jose in the Bay Area. And I just had this incredible village. They say it takes a village to raise a child, and I am living proof of that. And I just was really fortunate to be a part of a community that it really believed in sports, believed in women in sport before that was really a thing. I actually didn't even realize that there was any gender equity problems whatsoever until I went to college. And because I was in such a great environment that just told me all the time, you can do that, go for it, and I didn't realize how lucky I was till much later when I started to hit some obstacles that I didn't know really even existed before. But then I went to college at UC Santa Barbara and played there and had a great coach who I think was one of those that really did things the right way. His big thing was habits of excellence. He would always preach. He was a big Covey fan, and talking about that basketball is just a vehicle to create life lessons and life habits, and really affected me. And then I went to UCLA as an assistant right out of college, and just like an unbelievable opportunity. And that's where I started meeting with Coach Wooden every other Tuesday. And thanks to Steve Lavin, who brought me to his house for the first time, and I think it was 1994. And I just was so deeply affected by the way he went about his business. And I think it encouraged me that you could actually be competitive and care about people's hearts first, and really coach from the inside out and in a transformational way. And I heard all the lingo about that, but I wasn't totally sure it could really work. But when you look at Coach Wooden and 10 national championships in 12 years and the way his players talk about him, you're like, okay, maybe I could do that. And then I went back to Santa Barbara as a coach, and then I went to Florida State. And then now I've been the head coach at UCLA for going on my 14th year. So that's in a nutshell, really about people who invested in me and trying to just be a sponge and a good listener. And, just Trevor's a part of my story. When I was at Florida State from 2004, I met him, and when he was working there, and that really started my journey and my passion to learn about, the mindset and how we could change the way we think, and what does that look like in light of performance. And so that planted a seed in me really early, that really has continued just to grow in how I go about business. And I really believe now that the work, as you guys would say, in Limitless Minds, that is the most transferable skill, one of the top 3 most transferable skills I can provide a player. Forget what it does for performance. That's another another subsequent thing. But more importantly to me is it's a skill that they're going to take with them long after they're gone from UCLA, long after the ball goes flat, for that matter. So all that to say is I've had a great journey, and I'm really passionate about coaching from the inside out and really working on our mindset. And I was thinking to myself, preparing for this podcast today, that it's not an arrival, it's a lifelong commitment and journey. And I'm still on it. And I don't believe that anything can be done through me until it's done in me. And so the more I study, the more I realize I have so much to learn. And it's really a lifelong journey and commitment for me to really transform my mind in the day to day.
That's so great. That's so great. Well, our friend Trevor used to say, success leaves clues. And I love how intentional at a young age you were at aligning with great leaders. What did those mentor sessions look like with the late John Wooden? And tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the most fun part about it was different every time, because he was so authentic, right? So he was never going to put on a show. It was never going to be like, okay, now it's my mentoring time and I'm going to say all the right things. Sometimes it was reading the latest poem he wrote. Sometimes it was showing me pictures of his great-granddaughter, Cori, who happens to spell her name just like me, which is the only reason I think he let me in the door. But sometimes it was telling me about one of his alums, what they were up to. And so it was, I would say about 5% of the time, it was about basketball. And it was about, I could tell you, and we could have a whole podcast on just stories, but one of the things he used to tell me is, remember, Cori, you're not coaching people's jump shots, you're coaching people's hearts. And he said, but if you coach their hearts pretty well, then guess what? Their jump shots end up pretty good too. And, but it's just it was all about, I think, one of the things I think that I've learned from, Trev was about, it's not the big things, it's doing the little things with elite consistency. And that's what Coach Wooden did. He was so principled, centered, and consistent with what he believed to be true. Yeah. And so I'm a work in progress, right? I'm still working on that consistency just myself, but I think it made it palatable for me that he wasn't doing like these outlandish, humongous things that set him apart that only a few were ever going to be able to achieve. But if you were willing to embrace discipline and to embrace sort of what could happen by doing little things really consistently with principled centered commitments. Big things could happen.
Yeah, that's so great. It's interesting, Coach, that we often talk about at Limitless Minds, skill set times mindset equals performance. So you talk about that heart, you talk about the, a skill set like a jump shot or dribbling or whatever it is, but that's where you get performance. I think a lot of people will see, and we, you talk about we talk a lot about moving the middle, and moving the middle when you got people that are maybe can't connect those dots together, to have a coach like you to be able to say, you know what, listen, I'm going to pour into you from a heart perspective, but I'm also going to teach you the game too. And those two things seem to equate to excellent performance. So I appreciate you sharing that.
No, absolutely. I think you're so right. And I think that's what neutral thinking is all about, right? And is that you talk about, you're not trying to do this like you guys have heard many times and said many times, is about, it's not being positive all the time. It's about, I think, moving the middle to me means getting back to neutral and making that next right step. That's how you move the middle. And so, and that's a really hard discipline, especially when you're in a passionate, competitive public sport. It's very important that you have those pause moments where you can pause, gain clarity, and go, hey, what does this situation require of me? And it's not easy to do, but it's really worth the fight.
Yeah. A lot of organizations, whether it be in sports or in business, leaders try to solve for a motivation, like try to solve a problem around motivation. They try to motivate people. And oftentimes, especially a place like UCLA or, an awesome, corporate organization, motivation for most of your people really isn't the issue, because motivation for all of us comes and goes. It ebbs and flows. Some days you don't want to put your feet on the floor and go to that workout. Some days you want to eat the wrong thing because it just feels good. But it's really solving for, right. It's really solving for, behavioral change, right? Actually trying to get people to be disciplined, create a standard of behavior. And so, I was also wondering, what types of resources, access are you giving both players and coaches in your system, to kind of be surround sound to what you're, preaching and what you're coaching on? Like, how do you provide that resource and that surround sound around mental fitness and mindset and peak performance?
Well, it's such a great question, and there's so many different angles and ways I could answer that. I think the reality for me is it's almost like this, you're in this, coaching is like creating this big orchestra, and I am the director, and I'm determining sort of what melodies are going to be in our list of songs that we're going to learn to do and say, but it might be heard differently from one coach. Might be differently from when we had Trevor come in and speak to our team during the pandemic. It might be heard differently, from some of the outside people that we have coming in, or even just from a mentor that we bring in to be available. But the important thing is that it is all a part of the same melody. And so, and that's not always easy to do. And my job is to protect that, right? My job is to, the style can be really different. We now have 6 coaches on a staff, 5 assistants and myself, and we are so markedly different. And so we can reach kids differently, but the standards need to stay consistent. And so specifically, I just have to spend a lot of my time making sure that consistency is there, the standard is being held, but also celebrating the different styles in which that happens. I think that, what you said about how the different resources, I don't know if it's, I think the motivation piece is so deceptive. And I will have to tell you that sometimes I have to tell myself, Cori, that's not what they need. But it feels so good in a moment to be like, oh my gosh, I really got to them today. Oh, they felt that today, or, whatever. But the reality is actually the better use of my time and the better resource I can augment to them is to teach them how to detach from the emotion or the feelings, so that they're not dictated by whatever feelings they have that day. And so the tools to get to neutral, the tools to say, you know what, discipline is my greatest shortcut here. It's if I let my heart, the heart is deceitful above all things, I believe. And that sometimes we can just be, if we succumb to how I feel that day, or we don't learn to replace the feeling with the truth. John Gordon has a phrase, just because you have a particular thought or feeling doesn't mean you have to believe it. But in order to do that, you have to learn to replace something. You have to have good self-awareness. You have to have a plan and pre-decide how you're going to replace that feeling with truth and behavioral change and commitment. We always say it is your commitments, not your feelings, that will lead you to your destiny. And so I think that, motivation to me actually is a deceiving thing. And so sometimes I like it. And I'm just not being honest with you. I just like it. It feels good. I love to have a good video to start practice off to share with the team or whatever. But honestly, sometimes I have to be honest to say, you know what? That's not helping them. That's hurting them, because it's masking something that's actually more important to lead to real behavioral habits and change.
Wow. Yeah. That's really good stuff. How do you stay personally so connected in terms of like your mindset and building that on a regular basis? Tell us a little bit about that.
Imperfectly. That's what I do. Very imperfectly. I make a lot of mistakes. But I think my commitment to grow myself is a bare minimum if I expect that from my players and from the rest of my staff. So it's a very big thing. I spend about 45 minutes every single day trying to get my mind right. Now, I don't make that number all the time, but for the most part, I try to design my day that there's a part of breathing and visualization that I start with. For me, my relationship with Jesus is really important. So for me, it's reading my devotional and getting my mind centered about where I want to be principled centered with. It's a big piece for me is gratitude. Something I learned from Colin, who you guys know, but Colin taught me the HA method, the I haves, the I ams, and the I wills. And I say them out loud or I write them down, one of the two. But just really saying, it changes me so much. I remember one time when Colin was talking to our team and when he was talking about 80% of our thoughts are negative if you don't do anything about that. I just started playing that scenario out. If I do nothing, what are going to be the ramifications of having 80% of my thoughts be negative? How will that affect the people around me? How will that affect my perspective? And it just scared me, actually. And I was like, holy crap, I better do something different. Otherwise, if I stay in default mode and just let that dictate, I'm in big trouble. And so starting to really design routines that fight against it before I go to bed, really saying, finding what went wells from the day and trying to make that my own 5-minute treasure hunt of what went well that day. Otherwise, I don't want my subconscious to go to sleep thinking about all the negativity, because that's where I will go if I'm not intentional about anything else. And so, I think, and again, I think sometimes, and I say this a lot, sometimes I do this silly car rides with Cori thing, but
I was just about to mention, those aren't silly. I love those. That's what I was
but they really are for me. But I really think about, I don't want to come across ever that like, oh yeah, I got this thing dialed up. I think that I mess up all the time, and though trying to develop routines and disciplines to help you remember and get back on track. So, last night I didn't do I didn't grab a hold of my what went wells. I just crashed, and, but I think then today, the next thing is, okay, let's get back on track here. Let's remember, and let's get back on track with that.
Yeah, that's great. I like that. And you mentioned also like, the mistakes, the failures, both micro, macro, and things that happen as we're humans, right? We're human beings, but let's talk about the people side for a second, because obviously you're, as a coach, you're in the people business, you're in the basketball business, but you're in the people business, right? You're recruiting, you're in people's homes. Recruiting looks different now. We'll talk about that maybe too, like what it looks like. But, as a leader, DJ and I are leaders of an organization, a company, and, sometimes you spend more time than you want to on like the HR components, right? Like the people side. And then sometimes you realize that you might've failed with somebody. In other words, somebody leaves and you're kind of like, dang, like, what could I have done better? Like, I feel like that's a miss on my part. Like that's a player that I should have, that's an employee that should have been great. Should have reached their potential. I'm sure you've had those experiences where you recruit somebody, you're in their home, and then a couple of years later, maybe they're off somewhere else or
Yeah.
they've left. How does that land on you? And like, how long do you sit with that? Like, what have you learned from that?
Well, I think it hurts. I think,
Yeah.
but I always think about if it doesn't hurt, then what is my real investment like? If it doesn't hurt, how genuine am I really being? So I always ask myself when I'm sort of beating myself up, would you really not want it not to hurt? Would you really want it? What's the other side of this coin? And are you really willing to live with that? And the answer is no. So, but how long does it stick? I mean, I think it depends on the situation. But I think that the sooner I can own my own stuff, the sooner I can move on to being better from it. And, I think one of the things that becoming a head coach has taught me, just like you guys as leaders of organization, how important it is to say, I failed there, or will you forgive me? I just think as a leader, it's imperative. And if you want an authentic, trust building organization that has a healthy culture, that you learn from your mistakes, that you have freedom to mess up. It's not that, it's not that I make it lighter. It's just the fact that it keeps me from moving on. If I don't acknowledge it, not only me moving on, but the people it's affected. And so I just think it's you aren't gonna, and also sometimes someone leaves and it isn't your fault. I tend to think everything is my fault. And sometimes that's not actually healthy either. Like sometimes it's a matter of, I can't control that choice. They chose to leave this. We disagree. As much as I would love for there to be harmony here and perfect reconciliation, it's not. And you know what? It actually isn't my fault. And so I've got to be okay to let that go. That one is really hard for me because I want to be right and I want them to know I'm right, but I think the humility of it is saying, you know what, my bigger responsibility is to lead my organization and to invest in the people that are now under my care. And so I think it really does change upon the circumstance, but I just think if we can have the habit of being willing to hold the mirror up, and that's not a weakness. That's what the organization needs from me. But to say, you know what, I could have done better there, or will you forgive me there? I just think that's where your greatest strength and power actually lies in leading to influence.
Yeah, Coach, just to unpack that even a little bit further, or at least a different example, how do you get over a big loss or a loss, of a game? Like how and give us as leaders, I mean, a lost deal, a lost, client, whatever it is. Like what do you do to
besides a really good glass of wine?
That could be it. That's fine. That's it. That's right. That's it. Period. All right, good.
I think that for me, and this has been interesting as a leader, is I'm a verbal processor. I want to come to conclusions. And I would say half my staff are the opposite of that. They really need to let go. And so trying to find after a tough loss, we had a really tough loss last year at Oregon State, one we should have won and one that I felt responsible for. And I think it was really about, I actually asked a couple of them, I know most of you are not verbal processors, but I'm going to ask you to give to me right now. And I need to process this. Otherwise, it's going to be really hard for me to move on. And I think there's a balance of that. Sometimes me being okay to say, this is really what I need as a leader right now, and to be okay with that. And then sometimes going, you know what? I need to deal with this stuff on my own and let them deal with it in the way that they do. But I think knowing what is your healthiest process. I think most people don't pause long enough to go, all right, difficult things are going to happen. How do I pre-decide what my healthy process is going to be? Because if you don't pre-decide that and really think that through, because I don't care if you're leading an organization or a family or, a team, the bottom line is that tough stuff's going to happen. And when you enter into community and groups and you're high achieving and you want to do great things, there's going to be friction. I call them the porcupine moments. They're going to be prickly and you're going to have to work through them. And so I think that in order to try to get to neutral faster in those, I think it really helps to think them through in advance and to pre-decide, this is a healthy thing for me. so that I don't just rely on drinking a bottle of wine, and so that I don't, try to play the blame game. That's easy to do. Well, that wasn't my fault. That was her fault. Or, some of our default things that are not healthy, if we don't pre-decide of how we're going to replace those, it's going to be hard to live in a healthy fashion in terms of how we respond to adversity. I also think really intentionally put truth tellers around you. And whether that's your spouse or whether that's a CEO or a leader or someone you hire, but you intentionally say to them, I need you to be a truth teller in my life, and I am giving you permission to tell me where my blind spots rear their ugly head, so to speak. And so I think really being pre-deciding, surrounding yourself with really good truth tellers, and then going, what do I want tomorrow to be like? Okay, this happened, but what do I want tomorrow to be like? And how in my response right now leads me to that space, my response to the adversity or the tough thing that's going to happen, which response is going to lead me to what I want my tomorrow to be like? And so, and I'm a huge believer. And as soon as that, I tend to beat myself up over the past, and so, but the longer I stay there, the worse I am in the present. And then now, if I'm not in the present, I start worrying about the future, and I can spiral really fast in that. So I think it's really putting safeguards and good boundaries around you that can help you respond in a healthy way.
Harry, I don't know if I've ever heard the advice of actually thinking about, and this is such a high level of self-awareness you have, Coach, thinking about how somebody else wants to process before you even start to think about how you want to process. Like I don't think I do that enough. It's just like you said, whether you're somebody that verbally processes or you think about it, like it's usually you start with yourself and you're like, I need to get through this, but like you taking that extra step to be like, what's my team? How are they processing it? That's next level.
I think it's a way to love other people well. Sorry, go ahead.
That's good stuff to know. I apologize. That's really good stuff to know about your people, because like you mentioned earlier, like you have people in different kind of readiness, like in kind of adversity readiness, right? You have different people that are coming in different times. You might have somebody on the staff that's a grad assistant. Maybe you have somebody that's senior that's probably going to get a head job somewhere else in any time now, and then everywhere in between. And so their maturity and like how they're growing and match with character and personality. Like you got a lot of different kind of people to serve, and how they like how they respond. So I think that's tremendous, and it kind of goes to this kind of building a culture component that I was really curious about, because it's well known that you've built a culture that can withstand student athletes coming and going every year. There's a new team. Every 4 years, you're rolling off, typically every 4 years, I guess, you're rolling off new folks. And so like, so you've already described a lot of the things that probably are systems that you're building to build that good culture. But I'm also really curious is about, what are those culture killers? Like what are those things that, like, in your experience, you've seen, like, man, this right here is, that's the rat poison right here. And something that is like a part of your thesis as far as, what you don't, where you want to stay away from,
Yeah. Well, and it's evolving, right? As this landscape, especially in college athletics, is changing so dramatically. But I just think in our just landscape as a world is changing so dramatically. So, it's interesting. We just did an activity that we finished with our team yesterday that, and I got this, I have to give credit to, he worked with us at Florida State when I was there. He was a scout guy, then he was a GA, and now he's an assistant coach at Belmont. And I asked him, I said, Jamie, is there anything you've done that you feel really good about? And one of the things he had done with the team retreats at Belmont is 3 things we have to protect and 3 things we must avoid for our team to reach our potential this year. And so I did that. And so you talk about the culture killers. So the 3 things that we have to avoid this year is listening to outside voices is one. Is direct communication, so that we don't have cliques, we don't have unhealthy communication that leads to not handling conflict well, and so on and so forth. And we have to handle one thing, just even more than just outside voices, is social media. and how we handle and be defined, what we take in. And this is the players came up with this, not me. So, and then we had them define those things. But, I told them I'm a big believer that performance equals potential minus interferences. I said, how would you rate? This is the most talented team I've had in 31 years of coaching. So I said to them, what would you rate our talent and our potential? And they were like 9, 10. And I said, okay, so what's the only thing that could get in our way? Is not about all the things we're going to do perfectly. It's about avoiding the interferences. It's about avoiding those toxic, energy vampire kind of things that just suck the life out of you. So selflessness obviously is another really big thing for us is, and that's on the good side. We said we're going to protect, but I think, it's really about, and I always go back to our core values. So that our core values are growth mindset, being people of gratitude, okay, and being lifestyle givers. And so then I think about, all right, what are all the things that get in the way of that? And that's when you get to, we write a lot of thank you notes, because it's not just because it's actually really good for the person receiving them, but you know what? It's good for our hearts because we get so much. We had a support staff dinner about 2 weeks ago where we just honored all of our support staff in advance for all the things that they were going to do. And it was really striking because there were 32 people at the dinner and 13 players. And that means there's more support staff people that are serving them. I said, you guys will never have another time in your entire life where you have this many people invested in your experience.
Wow.
And, but I said, but we all forget, all of us forget. And so it's so important to go back to gratitude of how fortunate we are. This is an I get to experience, not an I have to experience. So I think fighting against entitlement, fighting against I'm owed this, fighting against, NIL. I am an NIL proponent in the way that it was introduced and should have been kept, but not as much the way it's been executed. But I still am like, in order to have NIL be a positive thing, you're going to have to protect yourself against entitlement. Like I'm owed anything. No, you're not. You don't have to be here. You're choosing to be here, and I just think that's a really important thing. I always, actually your friend Jeff Walls that will say right here, you beat in tennis recently.
Thank you. Yes.
Take
on the record. On the record.
It was a playoff.
I mean, come on, step your game up.
Yeah, just mic on the playoff.
But I think one thing he used to always say is, you do not have to come to practice today. You are choosing to accept this scholarship. You are choosing to be here. This is a choice that we make. And so I think you have to fight against that, all of us in our lives, every day. And it's one of those things that if you leave it to chance, you'll end up entitled. If you want to be a person full of gratitude, you better work at that. Or the whole thing about being a lifestyle giver, not a taker. So I'll just ask our questions. So are you being a taker right now or a giver? That's a choice you got to make every day, taker, giver. And, I'll say to them, so do you think it's their job to just give to you and you to take? Is that the kind of experience that you want? But I think you have to make a conscious choice, or, the definition of a growth mindset is everything that happens to me today is an opportunity to learn and grow. So when you give that away and you're like, well, the coach is just all over me today, or, I can't make a shot today or whatever, you are going into being a fixed or victim mindset. And I'm like, is that who you want to be? Is that who you want to grow into? Or do you want to choose to flip it on its head and say, no, I'm going to turn this into, do I like it? No. But mistakes are just feedback. Disappointments can be just a way to help you steer into further growth. So, the answer to all those culture killers is that there's so many. But I think the reality is, what are the things that take you away from your values? And if your values and visions are well defined, all you have to do in your organization or your family or your business is say, okay, what are the things that draw us away from those values or that vision that we say will optimize who we want to become? And that will tell you what your most important killers are that you have to protect against.
Yeah. No, that's well, you mentioned NIL and you also mentioned interference in terms of distraction. Is what advice would you give to a player or a coach in that area? And
Yeah.
I mean, I know this is evolving, right? And
Yeah.
it's something everybody's trying to juggle, and not that you have the magic bullet, but is there anything
No.
that you're thinking about as it pertains to those two things?
Well, I think, it really does come back to character and values in your heart. Because think about the NBA, just in my world of basketball, over 80% of players are bankrupt or in financial difficulty 5 years after they leave the NBA. So just getting a check is not the answer. So when you're choosing a college or university, if you're going for a money grab, you won't be any different than those NBA guys, So what are the two things that are going to stay with you from the rest of your life from these 4 years? I remember Joshua Medcalf, who was our director of mental conditioning for my first 3 years, or more than that, more like 6 years. I was at UCLA. He brought our whole team out into Poly Pavilion, and he brought them all around the circle. And he said, what are the two things that are going to stay with you for the rest of your lives from these 4 years? And Jordan Canada, who's now on the WNBA, said, I want a banner, baby. I want to lift that banner. And he goes, man, I will be at your banner raising ceremony, but banners hang in gyms. Banners are a byproduct of the behavior and the choices and the habits character that you have. And then someone else goes, give me a ring. I want that ring. And he said, you know what, man, those ring ceremonies are really fun. But the reality is that rings sit in trophy cases and collect dust. It is the character of what led you to that point. It's the teamwork. It's the relationships. It's the habits that stay with you. He says the only two things that stay with you for the rest of your life from these 4 years is who you become and who you impact. Who you become and who you impact. And so I really try to say to parents and to student athletes, we want to compete at the highest levels. I want to raise banners too. I want you to make as much money in NIL as you can possibly earn. Awesome. But I want to give you the tools, for instance, in NIL to plan for your future, to have financial planning, to have, wealth building, to make good choices, to understand budgeting. I want there to be an infrastructure of character so that you're not one of those NBA guys. And I want you to, when you walk across that stage, I want you to be so proud of who you've become and who you've impacted, because that's what's going to follow you to your next place. Or what I love about what you all do with Limitless Minds is, these skills of neutral thinking and how to harness the mental stability of choices and behaviors and neutral thinking. Those things will affect you as a professional athlete, as a professional in life, with you as a spouse. And so I always tell parents and families, if that doesn't make you less competitive, actually it makes you more, because you want to maximize all of this that's in front of you during this particular time. But don't get it twisted. Banners hang in gyms and rings collect dust. When I ask parents, when they come home for Christmas, what do you want to see in them? For the first time, when they come home and you haven't seen them in a while, what do you want to see in them? And is it just that their jump shot's a little bit better and that they play a little bit better defense? Is that really what you want? Is it that they got X amount of money in NIL deals? I mean, is that really what you want as a parent? Because that isn't what I'm placing the greatest value. So if you're choosing us, you're choosing character and who you want to become and who you want to impact.
Based on where you place that value, and that's you said that like Crystal, if you were in my house recruiting Gracie or Jada, actually, DJ Eisen's got a daughter that you need to be going to see. I'll tell you that right now. In a couple of years,
okay,
you're gonna be like,
all right.
Class of 2030. That's it.
Yeah, I'll plug it. He didn't want to. I'll plug it. Right.
Okay,
Jada,
I'm with you.
Point guard too. But if you were in my home, my eyes would light up with that, with what you just said. Okay.
Right.
So based on that value system and what you just eloquently stated, how does that, like, how is your evaluation of talent and character and so on and so forth? How is that, has that evolved over the last 8-10 more years, like, from where you were to now? Tell us about that.
Well, how a player, not only a player or a recruit handles their social media. Like, I'm watching all that stuff. But more than that, I am really watching the parents because, like, I was at a USA basketball tournament this summer. And and that parent doesn't know there's a FaceTime, and I'm walking in line and the mom is on FaceTime with the dad. And the dad is saying, well, I don't care what the coach says. She needs to go get hers, and she needs to do this, and she's got to score more. And I'm like, ding, ding, ding. I'm not sure that's a good match for us, because even if the kid has the greatest of intentions, they got to go home and listen to that all the time. It puts the kid in an impossible situation. And so I just think that, parents and really learning about what they are going to reinforce. What values are you willing to protect, as they call home? Because they're going to be mad at me. They're going to be disappointed in how their performance is. They're going to struggle with their confidence. They're going to break up with their significant other. They're going to fail a test, fill in the blanks. When they call home, what can I count on you for? And what kind of messaging is that going to take place? Because otherwise it really puts I just think it's an unwinnable thing. I had a kid several years ago, but they were looking up at the scoreboard, and we're up by a lot, and I could just tell. And I said, what's wrong? And she, why do you keep looking up there? We're killing them. And she said, well, I know that what my dad's going to tell me if I don't meet my marks. And that wasn't her fault. That wasn't her trying to be a selfish teammate, or she loves her dad and she wants her dad to approve of her. And, the reality is, and it just put her in a very difficult spot. So when I'm evaluating now, the way that I evaluate how their body language after a mistake, how they are with the referees, the way that I think I'm more committed to that than ever, because it used to be when I recruited them, I could sort of sequester them and protect them in a little bubble. No more. There are so many influences, so much more information overload that I have to know about their entourage, their circle of influence, their families, their character, the messaging. And I hope that I self-select out if they don't want what we're selling. And it is different. I mean, the number one word we've chosen to describe our program is uncommon. And it isn't for everybody. Really isn't for everybody, because I will make you, our road is harder. I believe it's more beneficial and it's more rewarding in the end, but it is harder. It's not as convenient. And so I hope that I self-select out with families and parents that don't want what we're selling.
Listen, I wish I would have heard this a year ago. I was putting together an AAU team, and I was looking at the player and not the parent. And so you would have saved me a whole year of.
Well, I'm not going to tell you that I still don't have struggles, but I told our team we were talking about outside voices in our meeting the other day, and I just said, you guys got to understand, what do you think it does with the chemistry of your teammate if one parent is in the stands, just berating another kid, and they don't know that the cousin, the aunt, the whoever of somebody else is sitting right next to them, and it's just if you guys, I said, raise your hand if you want really good trust and chemistry on this program. And they all raise their hand. And that you want to be able to count on the people in that locker room. Everyone raised their hand. I said, those are the kinds of things that kill it. And I said, and if you don't help me protect against that, it will erode. And so that's up to our players too, about what they want to fight for and what they want to protect.
That's right. Well, Harry and I collectively, between the two of us, have 6 daughters. So say a prayer for us while you're talking to Jesus. Make sure you say a prayer for us.
I will. I will. Jesus, protect them. Bless them.
And I bring that up because we're very excited about the rise in women's sports and specifically basketball too. And tell us about that. How your thoughts around that? How do we keep this momentum, going? And tell us a little bit about it.
It's really interesting time because on the one hand, I've never been more encouraged and more excited and more passionate about where women's sports are. But in college, I'd also say the way that collectives are with NILs right now, and it's also one of the most difficult times for gender equity in sport. Over 80% of NIL deals are happening from collectives, not at our place, because we do it very differently, but and 90% of those are for men. And so you think about that. Here we are, we're soaring up, and we're TV revenues, attendance, corporate sponsorship, grassroots opportunities. All these things are at unbelievable heights. And then you have the collective space that is, and we'll be interested to see what the House settlement, how it really actually plays out. I thought this was going to be the last year of that, but I don't know if it is now. So we'll see. But I think that one of the things that's really, we need to protect against that. And honestly, dads like you guys need to help us, help say, you know what? I want our same, now women are on TV more, their ratings. I mean, the Final Four rated the men's Final Four this year for the
Cleveland,
first time.
Ohio. That was in Cleveland, Ohio, by the way, Harry
Wilson.
That
was go Ohio. Look at you, a shout out for Ohio. I mean, you got to take those things when you can get them. Right?
You have to. That's right. That's right.
But I think that the reality of that is here we are having that, and we need people to say, hey, wait a minute. These NIL opportunities, especially if they're coming from universities and collectives, they need to represent the changes in the marketplace, and they're falling behind right now. So we need people to educate themselves and understand that, really understand the spaces of those things and fight against it, and to go, hey, wait a minute. I want, one of the families that I get a chance to be a part of is Kiki Rice and her family, and her brother plays at Yale. And she is really passionate about gender equity because she was the more highly recruited, highly decorated player out of high school. But her brother,
Sidwell Friends, I believe.
That's right. There you go. Another shout out. I got 3 of those now. I got 3 Sidwell Friends players on my team now. So go Sidwell. And but I think that the reality is she saw that even though she was at a higher level, her brother got more opportunity just because he was a boy. And so we, how can we celebrate? I'm really big about, I don't want to take anything away from boys or men's sports. I want to grow the whole pie. I want women to be seen as investors in the marketplace, that this is a good business decision to invest in women, not a charity case, and I think we are past that now. But if you're talking about pay attention to, as parents, and especially shout out to the girl dads, pay attention to corporations that are investing in women and support their products, repost their stuff on social media. I'm reposting such and such because they invest in women. And, do that as a dad. That's powerful. And tell all the parents in your AAU program to do it. Pay attention to the corporations that are investing in women in sport and individual women's deals, like sports ambassador kinds of things. Watch on TV, it's getting more exposure, but that won't do any good if we don't have enough eyeballs. So encourage. I can't believe our players when they say, yeah, I want to play in the WNBA. I'm like, you don't even watch it. Watch it, it, learn it, celebrate it, pay attention to it. I think that that's really, really important. And then I would just say, lastly, especially as men, please don't be afraid to say, hey, my daughter deserves that same opportunity, and not less of an opportunity for the boy next door, but as equal of an opportunity to pursue that. Because in the end, you go back to, celebration of what it does for women, self-esteem, leadership, character, all those things. That 90% of C-suite positions that are held by women, they played high school sports. And 58%, maybe even more than this now. I've heard a stat the other day that I haven't been able to say to, make sure it's true, but somewhere between 60 and 70% of those same C-suite positions, those women played college sports. And it's just so imperative. So we've got to continue to support businesses, corporate sponsorship, media deals, and put butts in seats if you want to see it continue to grow. And we need to celebrate it. And it doesn't have to be at the expense of men. It's okay. Yeah. We can grow the whole pie.
Yeah, I love it, Cori. That's really good advice, and like really specific too. So we're committed to that. We're committed to that for sure. I did have one clarification question.
I got notes, man. I got notes. Listen, no, she was kicking knowledge.
Yeah. dropping dimes. Quick clarification. So when you said collectives, what exactly does that mean for those that may not know what that is versus,
No, good point. Yeah. So, okay. So their name, image, and likeness is, trying to, for the layperson is, bottom line is if it started, Ed O'Bannon was like, look, there are these video games that have my name, image, and likeness. There's all these other people that are making money off of that. I should be able to be able to make money off of that. Or, there's a college student that they're using your name to advertise for games or for a corporation or whatever, then they should be able to get a cut of that. And I think that should have happened a long time ago, quite frankly. But in practice, not in theory or the way the law was intended, in practice, what's happened is they've formed these third-party businesses called collectives where people donate to this or raise money to pretty much pay players to come to their school. Okay. If you come to my school, then I'm going to give you X amount of dollars. And, I think men's basketball, I think for the top 20 teams, their payroll is somewhere between 4 million and 8 million a year. Like if you think about that, that's like unbelievable. And it went from 0 to 4 to 8 million in like really fast period of time. And so they're pretty much, coaches are going out there and just saying, look, we're going to give you X amount for coming to our school. And that is funded by what they call collectives.
Okay. Yeah, and thank you, because I wasn't quite clear on that either. Ed O'Bannon, he was a twin, right?
It wasn't a twin, but his brother Charles was, I think, 2 years younger than him, and they both.
Okay, so okay, that's what I was gonna say. And what's funny? The only reason why I remember those two brothers, Tyus Edney, like some of those players, because of the video games. Like it was Coach K was I think that was the video game they were in. Which I didn't realize that Ed O'Bannon was the one that started the movement here. That's interesting, really interesting. But yeah, it was a great game. He didn't get paid for it, I guess. It sounds like, but I know who he is.
No, and like it is for a lot of things, that he paid the price. Yeah. And something that he will probably never benefit from, but a lot of other people are benefiting because of his willingness to blaze that trail.
Well, I appreciate you bringing his name up, and also the work that you do too, because you practice what you preach. I know you do the you do the African American and Black owned businesses post where you support a Black owned business. I see that coming through your feed.
Well, I'll tell you, like anything, the players, they teach me more than I teach them a lot of the time. And in the midst of the pandemic, in the height of racial injustice, I wanted to do things that when George Floyd was murdered and we were really wrestling, and, women's basketball is the most diverse sport in all of college athletics. It has been for 10 years straight. So socioeconomically, politically, sexual preference, all of it, race, geography. And so we're having these really difficult conversations, and one of our big phrases is all of you is welcome here, all of you. So that means I need to know every angle, and it's okay. This is a safe space, but sometimes that is not easy to protect, especially when we come from very different backgrounds. And so really engaging in some of those hard conversations. And our leadership team, I asked them, okay, well, what does that look like for me? I asked every player one-on-one, what does it look like for me as a white leader to love and lead you well in the midst of this? Like, what does that look like? And I got a lot of really good wisdom from them. But one of them, Kiara Jefferson, said, Coach, you need to do things that you can do consistently over a long period of time that are non-political, that I don't care if you're from the right or from the left or whatever else, that you can go, this is a good thing. And she goes, I challenge you to feature a minority-owned business before every game and do it even after it's not sexy to do it anymore. And I think about her all the time. And so I did not come up with that on my own. That was a response to her challenging me to do something that who's going to argue with that? It's not, right. I don't care if you're conservative or liberal or whatever else and we need more of that, don't we, in our culture?
Amen.
I mean, we just cancel each other out. And so I really give credit to them as players. They gave me some really good wisdom in that time to be able to stand for some of those things. And it's about loving people that are different than you, that maybe even disagree with you. And I have not had those same experiences of having to start a business and having it be so much harder to get a small business loan. And I'm come from a place of privilege in that. And so what does it look like for me to cross that line to go, hey, help me understand how I can be helpful here. And so I give all the credit to my players that have really taught my heart in that and opened my mind and heart to opportunities I'm not sure I would have seen otherwise.
Harry, she said showing love is not political. Like it just, I mean, that's so powerful, Coach. Because you're right. I mean, to show people love and to just do the right thing, that doesn't have to be a political thing. And I see that I love following you because it's like, it's one of those things. It's garbage in, garbage out, right? So we really try to watch in what we consume, and your feed feeds us out here. So we appreciate. Yeah,
that means a lot.
Doing it, please.
Well, I respect you guys, so it's a joy.
We appreciate it. Yeah, we appreciate your time. As I think talking about standing up for something is a good place to stop to put a stop to the conversation. But hopefully we get another opportunity with you. But this is great. I also love the piece on all of you is welcome here, right? I love that too. So I'm going to steal that one and leverage that for what we're doing, and I think it's fantastic. So listen, we're going to be rooting for the Bruins this year.
Thank you.
And we'll be, obviously we got our friend Colin that's going to, it's in the mix. And so, so obviously we've already been rooting for the Bruins, but we're excited for the season. I know you guys are going to have a great squad. And so I'm excited to see what you guys do.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm not sure there's much that's impacted me more than the work that you guys are doing in the mindset space. And, we go to the mind gym every day with our team, and the way that Limitless Minds has, I watch you, I study you, and my life, forget just leadership and coaching, my life has been affected by what you all do. And so thank you for that. Thank you for affecting me and many others. And, I'm a champion for what y'all are doing. And so it's an honor to just have this brief time with you.
We appreciate you. Appreciate you. So thanks for joining us. And as our audience knows, we like to say, and as Trevor used to say, you don't have to be sick to get better. We'll see you in the next episode.
Amen.
Let's go.
Thanks,
you. Coach.
Thanks, Coach.
Hey,
that was
guys.
awesome. You were great. Good luck this year. Enjoy your weekend. You got any big plans this weekend? Anything?
No, we are in the middle of a recruiting contact period. So we are getting ready, and I'm doing a huge fundraising gala on the 25th, raising money for our community service arm of our NIL program, actually. So it's all hands on deck trying to raise money for this whole thing so that we can sustain what we're doing. So it's not a chill time for me right now, but hopefully I can't have anything to complain about. So it's all good stuff.
Thing. All good. So, well, have a good weekend. Great seeing you.
All right. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Bye now.
Bye.
Peace.